We're going to hear tomorrow from the latest round of the Ramstein contact group, a large amount of equipment that nations are going to continue providing. We certainly have to take the risk or the threat seriously. They have thousands of nuclear weapons, tactical and strategic. It clearly does not care how many innocent people are killed, but I still think it's very unlikely that they would use a nuclear weapon. Number one, there's no battlefield advantage to be gained by using a tactical nuclear weapon. That would not change what's happening on the ground in any significant way. In the Cold War, the doctrine for using a tactical nuclear weapon was to use it to create a gap or an opening in NATO defenses, and then they would have Soviet units that were trained and equipped to operate in a contaminated environment that would then exploit that gap that had been created. In the situation now in Ukraine, there is no place to create such a gap. And more importantly, there is no follow-on force that's trained and equipped to operate in a contaminated environment. So it gives them no advantage to do this. And I believe that they believe President Biden's warning that there will be catastrophic consequences if Russia used a nuclear weapon. And so I think the general staff of the Russian Federation forces, people around Putin and the Kremlin, I think they believe it. And so if there's no advantage, then why would you risk that sort of outcome? And I think it's also important that President Xi from China and other world leaders have also communicated that to use nuclear weapons, to even threaten the use of nuclear weapons, is unacceptable. So that's why I think it's not going to happen. The Russians have not changed any of their strategic objectives. Now, as I said earlier, what they say has very little credibility in terms of how they try to twist who's responsible for all this, somehow characterizing that this is defense of Russia. And of course it's not. The safest part of Russia was the part that touched NATO or Ukraine before this conflict. So I think that the Russian side certainly has millions more people. They do have unlimited natural resources, but they don't have the will to fight. I mean, it's clear that the Russian people really don't have stomach for this. They are, last September, at the first partial mobilization, 500,000 Russian military-age males left the country rather than joining the military. They don't want to be a part of this. Now, of course, you don't see protests in the streets like you do in other places, but I think this is a reflection on Russian society, but also a reflection on the enormous security infrastructure that President Putin has put in place. So it's a little bit difficult to judge what's actually going on inside Russia, how legitimate their support is inside of Russia. It's difficult to gauge accurately what does Russian society really want, really believe. So this could go on for the rest of the year. I think, actually, however, that the West, if we continue to support Ukraine with everything that we said we would do, and if we eventually get to the point where we're providing longer range precision weapons like ATACMS that can reach out and touch Crimea and make it untenable, I think Ukraine can liberate Crimea by the end of this summer, by the end of August. And that's the decisive part. After that, then the other parts will follow. Crimea is the decisive part.